Welcome to our Take a Seat series. I'm SJ Greaves, founder of Little Red Notebook. This is a series of short conversations with neurodiverse trailblazers, zero pity, pure wins, and zero deficit talk. Today, we're joined by Tanya Hicks, known to many as the sparkly alien.
Yeah.
How are you, Tanya?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
And thanks for joining us.
hmm
For those who don't know Tanya, Tanya is a late identified autistic and ADHD woman, solo mother, advocate, author, and founder of Neurodivergent Empowered,
hmm
the Sparkly Alien, and Sparkly Aliens Incorporated.
Yeah.
We better delve into that. So welcome,
Yep.
Tanya, and take a seat.
Thank you. I've got my comfy seat ready.
I want to start the conversation with a quote of yours that resonated with me.
Okay.
I've always felt like a sparkly alien, a little different, a little out of place, but uniquely radiant in my own way.
Yeah.
Now I fully embrace that spark and invite you to step into your own authenticity with me. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. I've always known I was a little bit different from those around me as well. And, it could have been just my humor, what I like to wear, how I moved my body. And for a long time, I learned, because I am an intelligent woman, so I learned what you should do. And I went off that track for a long time and I was miserable and disconnected. But once I started realizing, well, really, it came with the birth of my son and knowing that he was diagnosed autistic at 2. So I wasn't diagnosed at that time. And I learned very early on in my parenting journey that my son didn't do what I said. He only did what I did. So I was like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to get this right. And I was very passionate. I wanted to empower him to be his authentic self. And then I realized that I actually wasn't. I had taken on board the cookie cutter, neurotypical persona. And yeah, I just was like, well, if I want my child to be authentically happy and his own self, that I have to start doing that. So I did start doing that just for him and started showing people the real me, which is actually quite terrifying. Um, Usually that is reserved for maybe your partner, or maybe one or two close people. But yeah, I started doing that, and some people left. I have to say, some people left, but a whole heap of people came. Um, so yeah, it's been great and hard at the same time.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Mm,
That conflict between, trying to fit into an unnatural space, yet trying
yeah.
to be authentic at the same time. Now that we're starting to understand neurodiversity more, do you
Mm,
think that has helped?
100%. I think it gives permission. It gives permission to be yourself. In saying that, I also don't think it's safe to also always be authentic. I feel like I was very big at the beginning of unmask and be you, but then there are times when it's not safe. Yeah,
Yeah,
I believe safety is first, like safe spaces to be your authentic self. And sometimes, like even in my role, that there are professionalism. I can't be
yeah.
doing who I normally am when I'm in a networking conference advocating for rights for us as well. So there is that balance of knowing when to be your authentic self and in those beautiful safe spaces, and when you need to play a role, which is what I'm very good at because I've done it my whole life.
Yeah, we are very good at playing roles, aren't
Mm.
we?
Before I understood that I was neurodivergent, I had a very deficit focus on that. It was like,
Yeah,
what's wrong with me? Why
yeah,
don't I get that? Or why don't they get me?
yeah,
Um, so being diagnosed or having that knowledge has really opened up permission, but also acceptance. And
yeah,
and I think taking those trailblazers that went before me as well, that gave me permission as well to go, well, I actually think they're pretty cool and they have their own quirks and they don't tick the boxes. Um, and so maybe it's okay if I do too. And I think at the moment, I'm very focused on spiky profiles, which I didn't even know was a thing when I was younger, because I'm really quite gifted in some things and I can't find my keys every day. Like it's that up down spiky profile.
Tell
And
me about that.
so, in a nutshell, a spiky profile just means you're really gifted in some areas and quite deficit, like possibly disabled in other areas.
Yeah,
And most people feel like you're either, and when I was raised, it was like, this is where you are across the
yeah,
board, or this is where you are across the board. And when I was growing up, most people saw my deficits and focused only on those to, well, you can't be getting lost on the way home because you're often in your own little world, but playing no emphasis on the fact that I'm actually quite intelligently gifted. But I didn't know that growing up because all of the focus was on what was doing wrong. And I realized it because those were the inconvenience parts to others,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So these parts, they're not inconveniencing anyone, so there's no focus on them. But when I'm late or when I've lost something or I'm distracted, it's inconveniencing other people. So that's where the focus is put on that. So it's been an interesting journey.
in terms of the high points of the spikes,
Yeah.
um, often we call them superpowers in some
Mm,
circles, but call them what you want.
sure.
Those spikes are really important. What are your spikes?
I would say my extremely fast brain, like I've had it hooked up and it's like the fastest it can go. Um,
Yeah,
Fast brain, which is great if it is empowered to focus on the right things. Yeah, definitely that. It can be empowered to focus on just looking out at the sea and
yeah,
just fight. So it's like knowing where to put your energy. And I have practices I do for that myself for that. Um, I'm very good at pattern recognition, which led me to believe when I was younger, maybe I'm psychic, but don't think that's true. I actually just think I'm really good at recognizing patterns really fast. I feel like my solutions focused part of me is I've pivoted so many times in my life and my brain automatically looks for a different solution that's not there. And I used to be not confident with that because I'd come up with things that no one else had thought about before. And therefore, I shut down and thought I was wrong. So many times I'd come up with whatever the solution was. And because I'd share it, and the people around me would be like, oh, that doesn't make sense because there was no neural pathways within them to put A to B. But then I go, oh, and yep, you're right. And then someone else would do it 5 years later, 10 years later. I'd be like, I said that. So
yeah. It's
understanding that sometimes our autistic brains can see things that haven't been there yet.
yeah.
And I feel like I lean into that bit of genius of me a lot more.
Yeah, it's amazing you talk about that because it's something that I've experienced as
Mm,
well.
yeah,
Because my brain works very similar to what you're
yeah.
describing. Yeah, and you do get that kind of futuristic view, but it doesn't seem like a futuristic view, does it?
Mm,
It's
no,
you
that's
like you're
right.
going, you guys see this?
This the amount of
It,
times I've said, what am I not saying properly here?
yeah.
Why can't you see what I'm got in my head here and what I'm trying to articulate? Yeah, so many times.
But how are we shifting the narrative away
Mm.
from that being annoying
Yeah,
and sometimes to the point where people try and destroy
yeah.
our confidence in respect to that or feel
Mhm.
threatened by it. How has that shifted over time? Are you noticing shifts?
I am noticing shifts with the knowledge that's coming now. The more information we have about neurodivergence, the more information we have, like about upgrading the DSM as well, and seeing it in its holistic capacity. I feel like that conversation is changing because you've got more people speaking about it. In the past, I had no one speaking about that at all, had no one to look up to. We've got more safe spaces like I have here at the Nest where it's just kind of normal that we get together and the teens have a conversation and it becomes a normal thread of conversation. And therefore, it's not like, oh, that's totally foreign. I must be wrong. Having an understanding that when people don't get it, it's usually from a place of love and protection, but it doesn't feel like that when you're passionate about it and you just want someone to get you and see
Yeah.
what you're seeing and support you. I think that comes with age as well, and also getting yourself around like-minded people. I cannot say that enough. And I don't mean have to be in physical face to face because I find that exhausting at times. Most of the time, virtually, Facebook groups, like getting around people who actually think the same is crucial.
Yeah. I want to go back to the sparkly alien and
Mm.
more specifically the alien part, because
Yeah,
with my coaching of neurodiverse professionals, that whole concept of alienism and,
yeah,
and feeling like an alien is very common.
yeah,
And I think it comes down to that belonging.
absolutely.
How is that something that you now use? You obviously use it beautifully in the way that you've got the sparkly alien,
Yeah,
but how do you use it to not necessarily step into the neurotypical space, but
yeah.
to contribute to the overall perspective?
Sure. So I take come of it more from I call it authenticity architecture. So it's
Right.
actually about embodying, first of all, understanding. Most of
Yeah.
us don't even understand ourselves. We don't know what is best for our body. We don't know what's best for our brain because we've been trying to fit this neurotypical model. So
Yeah.
I feel like the first part is that self-education or going to a coach like yourself or a therapist, or even for me, I'm autodidact, which means that I can learn something by teaching myself.
Yeah.
And just getting to know your sensory needs, getting to know your cognitive needs, all the things that make up your beautiful self. And therefore, we all kind of have us aliens in some way, but we'll all belong as well. I wrote a book called The Oxytocin Leadership Model. It's all about belonging. And I feel like that is what we need, that we can have belonging by being different. Belonging doesn't mean we're the same. You know,
Yeah.
if we're trying to fit in, that's the opposite of being authentic. And belonging is showing up in your most empowered, fully expressed, authentic self and being wanted and seen and heard and valued exactly the way you are by the people around you. So yeah, I wrote that book on the oxytocin leadership model. That's what I presented on at the Women Changing the World's summit in London a couple of weeks ago. And especially for women, as we get older, our oxytocin levels actually decrease as our estrogen decreases. So for female leaders, I'm thinking about your cohort, female
Yeah.
leaders, we need it even more so, that sense of belonging, because I created the nest and initially I created it and I empowered everyone and I was kind of on the outside still. And I was like, man, I just created exactly what I was not trying to because I wanted to empower everyone. And then I realized I too needed the belonging. So I feel like with the being an alien, yep, that's just kind of a little what I've thought I was when I was younger. But once I took my mask off, I found out that I had similarities even with my own sparkliness as well.
Yeah. It's a beautiful concept, and the fact that you've written a leadership book,
Mm.
what was the catalyst behind that?
My way of learning is writing to myself. It was when I had that built this nest. I love what we've built here, but when I looked at myself, I still felt disconnected, and it was really quite devastating for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm still the same. I still feel on the outer. How did this happen? And I wanted to write it. And so I wrote it all out and I was like, did the research. And I'm like, I didn't include myself. Um, funny that. And which is, I suppose it makes sense because we're used to putting our needs to the side. So it just
Yeah.
effortlessly happened again. So I wrote that for myself first. And then I shared it with a few people and they're like, oh gosh, I do the same. Like my neurospicy friends, I do the same. And I was like, all right. So this seems to be a consistency because we have been conditioned to put our needs aside to fit in, not be inconvenient, do all the things that even as leaders, we sometimes create these things where we're not even being embodied and supported. And yeah, so that was why I wrote that book. And I hope that it does help others because it is for sensitive trailblazers. So when you said what your podcast, I was like, oh yeah, and change makers. Because I do feel like we've got these incredible gifts. We just have to find ways to harness them in ways that we have the capacity to deliver on them and the sustainability to stay in it because a lot of us fall over because of the lack of capacity to keep going.
Yeah. And that's one of the tragedies of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
And hopefully one of the areas that, we can shift in the short and medium and long term.
absolutely.
This whole concept of belonging is quite interesting. What
Mm,
does belonging mean to you? When you were
yeah.
writing the book, did it shift your understanding of what belonging meant?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I don't know if I've thought about that before, if it shifted. I knew what I wanted, which was to
Right.
be seen, valued, and heard in the spaces that I consider to be my safe spaces. And I feel like that's what belonging is that we can be two very, very different people, but I respect you and I honor that that's what you have to bring to the table. That's what you believe. That's what you want to wear. And, I love and care for you because that's what makes you you. And I feel like that's belonging to me is that you can see someone in their wholeness, in their authenticity, and you want them in your life. That's what belonging is for me.
Just a final thought. What's one
Mm.
piece of advice you would give to a neurodiverse individual who's trying to make sense of where and how they fit into this world? And I suppose that fits into that belonging piece, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. My biggest advice is about to know where you belong, you have to know yourself. You have to get into the nitty gritty of knowing your sensory needs, knowing your cognitive needs, knowing what your strengths are, and knowing who you are when people aren't telling you what you should be. So that is the first part. Is always like know you first. Even if you're not showing it to everyone at the beginning, know who you authentically are first. Because I had times where I didn't even know what made me happy. Yeah, me authentically happy. I was like, oh gosh, I actually don't know if I could choose and do something. So that's number one. Number two is then safe spaces. Find the people who love, see, and value you exactly the way you are. And there will be people out there. Because I know for myself, that I'm different from everyone in my family. That is not where I go for safe, like my soft spaces where I can just like, yeah, this is me. And that's okay. My family play a beautiful role in my life. It's just that I'm different from them in so like nearly every way. But then I have this beautiful circle of people, personally and professionally, that are that like all the parts of me, and or some of them, but respect the rest. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, knowing that your sensitivity, your intensity, your everything that you probably have been shamed about yourself, that is something those are the exact things that people are wanting to connect with you on if you can find the right people. And I had to go outside of the circle I grew up with to find them. And that's okay. I've had a beautiful life of discovery, of finding these people, finding um, some people call it their tribe without being disrespectful to our Indigenous people, but finding your village.
To me, that was very difficult because, and
Absolutely.
I still struggle with it because, you know,
Hmm.
part of my autism, um, I find social settings very awkward. I find
Yeah.
going out and meeting people very difficult. So
Yes.
how do you break through that so that you can actually find that village?
I find honoring my communication It's not often like where if I was to do a podcast like this with this back and forth conversation, that's not my natural where I feel really comfortable communication. So I
Right.
do that for these type of special occasions, but I actually like groups where I can just participate when I want to and think about stuff. There's some memes going around about sending voice notes. That's me. I send a voice. That's how I communicate with my friends, is that I will audio something, they will reply when they're at it, and I may have a think about it, reply, and then delete, go, oh no, that's not actually what I meant. And so for me, it's like honoring your communication style, because if I had to show up to networking events, which I don't go to, I would be exhausted. I used to do that. Facebook groups, networking events on topics that I enjoy. That's the
Yeah.
key.
Uh,
But if it's something that I like to do, then I'm going to be able to talk to you for a long time about it. But if
yes.
it's just showing up for the sake of showing up and having a mingle at a barbecue, poke out my eye. Like, I hate that stuff. Like, give me some juicy stuff. Give me some conversations where I can get into the nitty gritty and talk about, you know, the detail of it. But yeah, finding capacity to put yourself out there in spaces of, shared interest.
Really appreciate this chat, Tanya. It's been
Hmm.
wonderful having you, join me today. How do people connect with you? How do they find you?
Sure. So I've got two websites. One's called thesparklyalien.com. So that's got all my books. I've got 7 books on there that I've written, and I've written 2 chapters of 2 collaborative books as well, which are really amazing to get the other people as well. The other one is neurodivergentempowered.com. That's where we have all of our safe space, the nest, but also we've got some virtual groups and face-to-face groups that are interest-based. Hence why we know that we get it. We get it here that unless you have the topic that you're interested in, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to show up and participate. So that's why I've segmented everything in, this is the younger Pokemon group, or this is the Dungeons and Dragons group, etc. Because at least you're going to show up and have something in common with the rest of the people.
There's a lot more connection between neurodiverse communities now. Like,
Mm.
the stuff that you're doing, the stuff that I'm doing. How do you feel about that?
I feel like it's a really great to help connecting people that are isolated, as in socially isolated. I feel like it's good that people are showing up and giving capacity for those connections. My only challenge with that is that I'm massive on being neurodivergent affirming. So all of my team members, it's non-negotiable. They go through a neurodivergent affirming practitioner mandatory training. And as long as we're doing that and we're creating safe spaces, I don't just like people just popping up because I think it might be the latest interests that they could make some money off. I really like it if people were neurodivergent themselves, leading the space and are neurodivergent affirming, so they can create safe spaces, because there's big capacity for this to be not a safe space if it's not run well. So it's something I'm very passionate about, is creating safe spaces for neurodivergent people to show up and connect. And the more of those that are coming up, I love that. As long as we're keeping our people safe.
Thanks, Tanya, and congratulations on everything you're doing. I know that you've had a lot of recognition recently with what you're doing, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have to say that that's not just me. I have a team. I can't do my part without my team. Anytime I get recognition, I always bring it back to the team as well. And I always make sure I go out and buy them little trophies as well. Um, because we can't do this alone. And as much
No,
as I really tried, because I didn't want to be let down, or I didn't want to not be, have that sense of belonging. And I've got that wrong over the years as well. But at the moment, I've got an amazing supportive team. And yeah, so thank you for the recognition, but to the team and the community and our clients, that goes as well.
oh, thanks, Tanya, and well done to your team.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Join us next time when we take a seat.